It's a wonderful pleasure to welcome three extraordinary musicians to this podcast. They are Caroline Brooks, Kerri Ough, I hope I pronounced that correctly, and Sue Passmore. They
Yeah.
formed the wonderful trio Good Lovelies, and they recently released their new album, We Will Never Be the Same. Caroline, Kerri, and Sue, welcome to this program.
Thank you so much.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so I should like to begin by letting you guys have the floor to tell us about the album.
Sounds good.
Who's
What do you
gonna
want-
go
What
first?
do you want to know? What do you want to know?
Who wants to do it first? Well, let's see. Yep, we just recently released it. It's been now, what's it been? 5 years since our last non-holiday release. So it's been a long time coming. We've been working on this one in particular for a couple of years. It lives in the roots Americana world. It's been wonderful. We wrote it in cottages around Quebec and Ontario and recorded in cottages. So it's got a very nice, relaxed feeling to it, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, we made the record with some friends of ours named Joshua Van Tassel and Christine Bougie. And they're pretty incredible musicians on the scene here in Canada and abroad. They're currently on tour with Bahamas Music, which is amazing. They're having a great time. And they came to us with this idea of how they'd like to record it. So as Sue said, we spent a lot of time in cottages in these spaces where we'd be really comfortable and tried to track a lot of the stuff off the floor together. And it was a really relaxed, special way to make a record. Sometimes when you're making a record, you have 5 days in studio to track everything and you're kind of under this crazy rush timeline, but none of this record felt like that to me. Even some of the final days we were in studio in Toronto at Union Sound, the whole thing felt relaxed. It was so cool.
And we're three songwriters in the band, so we get to give everything over to every 5 years. Apparently, that's our so far our trajectory on things. So we got to play around with each other's songs for quite a while, and picked what we thought were the best collection that fit together, and it became We Will Never Be the Same.
Awesome. Yeah. So, do you guys have respective solo careers?
Yeah, we all sort of do different things on the side as well. Good Lovelies has been our driving force for 17 years this year. But we all do a variety of other things on the side, musically and artistically. Kerri and I often perform solo, and Sue has this amazing career as a graphic designer.
Wow.
It's really, really a lovely way to having the trio be the central part of our lives, but also being able to go off on the side and do things as we're in different stages of the year, between tours, et cetera, et cetera.
So, are you guys planning a tour to support the album as well?
Yeah, it's going to happen pretty much all through the next year, through 2024. So we start in just a couple of weeks, touring across Canada, and we're going to keep going out in these smaller bits. We
Sue,
families.
I hate to scare you, Sue, but it's next week, not even a couple of weeks.
Next week. Yeah, we're getting there, but yeah, it's going to roll out over the course of the year, and we're going to take it across Canada. Planning to get into the States. We're headed over to the UK and so on. So we'll be touring this for at least a couple of years, but yeah, starting right away.
I understand. Yeah. And my birthday is actually next week.
Oh,
what day?
Yeah. The 18th.
That's kick off the tour in 8 days.
This is auspicious.
Oh, wow. Okay. So the first day of the tour is the 18th, eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when
Awesome. Yeah. So you guys are all based in Ontario, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We started in Toronto. We were all living in Toronto when the band started, and over time we've been off on various adventures here and there, and now we're still within the zone. We're between Port Hope, Ontario, and Toronto, so we're not too far apart now.
I see.
Yeah.
So, in case of those who are listening in on the Zoom call, you guys are tuning in from separate locations. So, mind telling us where you are respectively at the moment?
Yeah. Go ahead, Kerri.
I'm in I'm Kerri, and I'm in Port Hope, Ontario.
Yeah, I'm Sue. I'm in Newcastle, so just 20 minutes from Port Hope, about 45 from Toronto, so kind of in the middle.
And I'm Caroline, and I live in Toronto, Ontario.
Let's see. For 4 years, I live in Peterborough. I attended Trent, and
Okay.
that's a lovely town.
It is. My husband grew up there, actually.
Oh, really?
Very familiar with Peterborough, yeah.
Yeah, and actually got introduced to the Canada folk music scene there. There's this local artist where this is another person that I actually got to know you from, aside from the East Pointers. This wonderful fiddler, she's 16 now, Irish Millie. Is her name familiar to you?
You see
I
Irish?
don't hear.
Sounds great. I'll look her
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, you should really should. She's a local artist from Peterborough, and she's amazing. She recently did a fundraiser in honor of Terry Fox, who's a well-known Canadian name for you.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, look her up.
So tell us about the title of the album.
Good question. It took us a while to come to this title, I'd say. But I think it resonates on various levels. Yeah. It's funny. I suppose all three of us might give a different answer for why it might resonate to us, but it felt right at this time.
Yeah, I like to hear what the significance of the title to each and all three of you.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lyric from a song, which was part of where it came from, and just so because there are three of us and we're all writing for this record, we do sort of search for what's the through line or what does resonate with us, and we put a lot of things on the board and they got crossed out over and over and over again. And when we put this one up, I think we all thought this could work because yes, the topics of the songs are for me weightier and sort of speak to a new time in our lives and the next chapter, and yeah, like the topics feel a bit more like we just want to make a point that we're not well, I don't know, Sue, I didn't really let you finish what you were going to say about it, but we will never be the same. Yes, it comes from a lyric from a song, but we can only move forward, and we're not going back. Like, we can't go back and be what we were, even though it's beautiful and nostalgic. That's part of it for me.
Yeah, I think you can kind of live on both sides of things. There can be sometimes maybe I don't want to use the word sadness, but sadness or regret about never be the same. That it does just keep going no matter what you want to do. The time things, it keeps changing. At the same time, I think it's a great thing in this way of just we'll never be the same. I mean, if you look back through the Good Lovelies catalog, no album is really the same as the one before, and we allow ourselves that freedom to change and shift with each album we make, because the writing that comes to us is it's never the same as we get album to album. There's always some sort of shift. There are different things that have happened in our lives. There may be just different musical influences, ideas we want to chase down. But and then at the same time, yeah, like Kerri's saying, some of the lyrical content kind of speaks to some of those ways that things change and life changes, the world changes, all those things, in general, or all of us, we will never be the same as a society or community either. So yeah.
I don't really have much to add except I think it also, even though we probably don't want to talk about it, is like, for me, the part of the reason that title resonated. And Sue's right. Like we had this huge whiteboard in the studio, and we had dozens and dozens of titles, and it just, nothing was really feeling right. Nothing was feeling right. Although in retrospect, we could have called it the Cottage Record, and that probably would have worked too. But we just came out of a really crazy time in our lives. Like we just came out of the pandemic, and I know we don't want to talk about it, but that changed us fundamentally, a lot of us. And you know, it's almost like this weird thing that we went through, and then all of a sudden it's like we're full steam ahead again. The way this record resonates for me is like we're full steam ahead again. It's like we're not really acknowledging the fact that we just went through these years of like, it was wild. It was really, really challenging. It was beautiful in some ways for those of us who had the security net to stay home and feel safe enough at home, but it really changed us. And that to me was why this title resonated, is like fundamentally we are all completely different from that time. We can't ever go back to being the way we were before. And in fact, going through this record cycle, again, it's like so different than it was before. Touring is completely different, you know.
It's unknown territory, really.
Yeah.
The industry has changed. So
also, we really wanted a long title so that no one
Yeah. Having a really good time writing it out on social media every day. I'm like,
every time.
We will. Wow. Why did we call it that?
That was a good choice.
Yeah.
It's a hashtag WW and
then something
T. Yes.
Yes, you got the yes there.
Yes.
I'm glad you brought up the matter of COVID-19, because I like to hear from each of you, like how the pandemic changed you, if you're in a sharing mood, of course.
Mm.
Oh, Kerri, we can't hear you. There we go.
What's that?
We couldn't hear you.
We got you now.
Coming through. We got you now.
That's coming through in a lot of my songs. I just felt feeling really put that into music, because it was hard to talk about how that felt and how it can you repeat the question? Sorry, I got a little bit thrown off when
how did the pandemic change you? That's the gist of it.
Okay, yeah, it was maybe I don't have the first answer here, guys. I just wrote about it a lot, about how it was changing me, and I think that is through the songs that I've contributed here. That was definitely one way to express, because it was hard to talk about how it. Caroline mentioned that it was, for some of us we are fortunate enough to like have great partners at home, and fortunate enough we could stay home and be safe and have a home, you know, during all of this, and not be worried about those things. For that aspect, it had me close to my family and my husband, and I am grateful for those days and being able to be close to each other during a hard time. But it was very like the identity shift of losing our work, our points of connection, the ways that we go out in the world and like are connected to our community. Losing that was really hard, very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I felt similarly. I felt really bereft at first. We had a really huge tour canceled early on, and you know, one of the challenges which we've spoken about before is like you spend 15 years or whatever singing in harmony with people, and now you can't even be in the same room with them. Like that was very like it's almost like the ground was gone. Like I just felt like a bit of a free fall. On the other hand, I will say it has put a lot of things into perspective for me now. You know, I have 2 young kids, and we got this gift of time together that we never would have had. You know, Kerri, Sue, and I are on the road a lot, so we are all of a sudden, you know, just thrust into an all-time home life, which exposed some cracks for me in terms of like boundary making and, you know, giving myself space to be alone, how much I need that. But it also, now that I think, as I alluded to, we're full steam ahead. And I don't know if fundamentally things have changed since before, or I'm just not built for it in the same way, but I just feel like the world is spinning faster than it ever has. So I think that time to be still, and obviously full of worry and concern, anxiety, all those things. But it also really was like, oh, this life that we have is not, it's not sustainable, really, this like hustle culture. And here we are hustling a record. Like that's literally what we're doing every day. With a new record, you have no choice. You just have to hustle it. But hustle culture is really challenging and it's not good for us. And it's, I don't think I really realized that the way I do now since the pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that covers a lot of what was on my mind. Yeah, that time it opened up the thoughts of how I want to move forward. And you know, the time it's a funny thing where it feels like, obviously we're aware that this was a period of a solid 2 years, and in a sense, we've moved past a lot of things, but there are definitely still lingering things. It's not completely gone. And I think that sense that like we're post-pandemic now, it's like, I suppose, but there's still a transition period where things are not settled. They're not back the way they were. So we're still in sort of just a different phase of it, I suppose, in a way. And I guess it feels both like we lost a couple of years. They still happened in a very different way, but it felt like a lot of things disappeared. I noticed that in particular with family, with kids here. We saw our kids not having the life experiences that we expected them to have, and depending what age your kids are at, that there's a very big shift in those lives, which shift how we're approaching things. And yeah, I guess there's just a lot of stuff that it's still it feels a lot more relaxed and a lot more normal right now than it used to be, but there are still these lingering things that are just going to be ongoing effects, where how psychologically the way we experience things in life have just are fundamentally changed. Like I in a sense I compare it to these things where for example, my grandma, coming out of war times, very frugal about jams. It was very complicated thing if you wanted to put a lot of jam on your toast, and that was just not allowed because you said no, save your jam. Just and these little things that linger on. And I think for us, there are a lot of us that have those things that will linger on, when as it relates to even just people coughing or just how we interact with each other. There's still very much a discomfort with being in the room with someone who has any kind of a cold. So the way we handle these things is just so different than it was before. So it does kind of carry on, and it has, I think, in ways that aren't outwardly as obvious, it's definitely still changing things.
Yeah, and to the Sue's point, like we're about to go on a really big tour, and like we're still seeing friends lose tours because of COVID. You're right, Sue, like it's not over. So, but like the general attitudes around it have definitely shifted, and it feels like, yeah, it's a strange time still.
Yeah, like we always, generally in the past, we always, after every show, we went out to the merch table and met people and signed, and we loved that. And for a while there, it was just something that even when we returned to shows, we couldn't do that. And then when we did start doing that, it still felt very much like I have to wear a mask to protect this tour and to protect the job and so on. And now we're not wearing masks, but it's very much still in my mind that every time I go out to a merch table on this tour, you might end up sick, and then what do we do, and how does that impact things? So it's still here. It's still having an impact.
Yeah. I was actually in the Ontario area during the 2 years of the pandemic, 2020 and 21. Obviously I had to finish my last 2 years of university on Zoom, That was something I don't want to relive. But nevertheless, what I find coming out of the pandemic, which is we're at what, post-pandemic year number 2 right now, I find it rather underwhelming that people do not generally change their attitudes towards other people. I was hoping that the 2 years of the pandemic might cause a change in, like, a fundamental shift in our perception, but turns out for many people it's almost as if their normal day-to-day work is interrupted for 2 years, and there are all these, like, sloganeering about uh back to normal and back to normalcy and such, and I don't I actually, that has worked out very well for them because we're really back to normal. But for me, it's just not how it should go.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
in
will
a lot of
never
ways.
be, we'll never be the same.
Those
Yeah.
hats. Nice.
Yeah. No, it's true. It feels like it would have been nice if we'd everyone I think who talked it for a while, you would hear a lot of people talking about how some of the shifts were good and healthier in terms of, how we were working and spending our time. And then yet the second we were sort of able to get back to normal, it's like, great, let's go back to the thing, like Caroline's talking about, the hustle culture and whatnot. And so, some things have stuck, but a lot of it has just sort of, let's jump back right in. And then finding a lot of people, you talk to a lot of people who are feeling still very overwhelmed by this return to what we call, normal.
Mhm. Yeah, and assuming that each and every one of you have families and kids, so I like to hear from your perspective on the balance between, being a mom and being a musician.
Mhm.
Yeah, we all have varying family situations. I'll just speak for myself. I have 2 kids and a partner and a dog. And I used to believe that you could have it all, could do it all, but I realized that is not possible. There's no balance. There is no balance. Like, it doesn't exist.
Mhm.
So this, like, whole idea of, in my opinion, things have shifted over time. In my early 30s, when I had my daughter, I was really like, we can do everything. We can take our kids on the road. We can have healthy relationships. We can get enough sleep. It was just not possible. And ultimately, especially in our work, where we are home a lot and then we're gone a lot. This, like, idea of balance, it's really not a thing. And especially as musicians, like, our industry has changed so much, and we invest so much into our work, and we have to hit the ground running when these records are out. Like, this is the time for us to do it. But it's really, really hard for our families, all of us, all 3 of us. We, our kiddos, it's really hard on them, and our partners. And yeah, that's, maybe it's not, I don't think it's negative. I think it's just an honest way of, like, seeing my friends who have kids on the road right now. I'm thinking of Jen Grant with her 2 babies and her husband in the band. Like, they're just so tired. Like, it's really, really hard. And it's hard if you bring them, and it's hard if you leave them at home. And but we love what we do. So it's also important for our kids to see us, or our family members to see us doing the things we love, because it's important that they know that this is a part of who we are. That's how I feel.
I agree with, it's not balance. I think that I, like, have started to frame it as there are seasons, and they're like there are busy seasons for us, and then there are seasons that are like that have us at home and feeling like part of our family units more often. And I have for years, like, our Christmas season is always busy, and I have always framed it for my husband. I don't have children of my own, but I have my one nephew living with me who's 18 for the last 6 months. And so my husband and my nephew and I live together, and he's still in school. So we're managing like getting him to school and back, which is like its own hilarious puzzle piece. But I've for years with my husband was like, there is a season from the middle of November to the end of December where I'm not going to be a good partner, I'm not going to be a good cook, I'm not going to be a good house cleaner. There's none of the things that have come easy when I'm at home. They're just not going to be easy. And I remind him as it leads into it, I'm busy, I'm on the road, and it's going to be all about me for like 6 weeks here. And it's one of those things where like I try to take it season at a time, because there are like we have had like lots of home time, which has been very helpful for our families to better function, But and we're about to hit a busy season, and for my busy season right now, as the primary, like, not caregiver, but sort of primary caregiver to my nephew, is arranging everything for when I'm gone, and making sure he can get to school and that he's getting to his appointments, and it's just passing that off to somebody. So you're just including like a whole team of people to work for you to make things run while you're away. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting trying to. I 100% agree that there's no such thing as balance. There are crazy times, and then there's just normal crazy times.
Yeah, it's a lot of juggling and scheduling. And I have one kid. I have a son, and for me, I suppose I'd say I try to take it a tour at a time. And every year is different. He's 7 right now, so it's as he's been growing up through it. Of course, every year changes, and we take it one tour at a time. He doesn't love when I'm gone, but I know he's also, Kerri and Caroline are family to him. He knows who's on the road. He knows what's going on, and we figure out each time how to keep in touch and find fun ways for him to participate. I'll try to find a way for him to participate with me in a way on the road, whether that's something to do with a calendar he's keeping at home, or he has a watch that has 2 time zones on it, so he can see what time it is for me, what time it is for him. Or
Nice.
in the past, I would take one of his little toy cars on the road, and the car would go on the adventure, and he would follow it that way. So it's but it's finding ways that make us both feel okay with it. And then of course, but by the time I get home, he's like, so glad you're home. Like, it's it is tough. And then same with the partners at home, managing everything. So when you're gone for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, that they're not when all the management is on your own, it's different. I'm not sure exactly what I'm trying to say there, but it's just trying to make sure everybody's got it covered, so that we're not also on the road thinking, oh my gosh, there are all these things going on at home and I'm not there to help. And so on.
Or run the ship.
Yeah, because we're supposed to be on the road, like giving our best shows, which we can do if we know everyone at home is in good hands and in good health. So it's a lot of people and a lot of luck, and I like also taking it one tour at a time, because one's 10 days long, one's 5 days long, one's 3 weeks.
One's far, one's close. It's
But it does take a village, right? Like we all rely on various people to varying degrees. Like for me, it's so nice for our kids. Sue and our boys are born 3 days apart, so they're really at similar stages. Like they're also best buddies. By the way, Sue, he wants another sleepover. And just like they know, like Sue says, they know what we're doing. They've been on the road with us a bunch, so they can picture it, and it's exciting for them to say their moms are rock stars. Although I think that'll change when they're teenagers. You're like, well, they play music.
Guys, my nephews were over Thanksgiving, we're like sharing the billboard and showing people. So they were.
That was cool. We were on a big Amazon billboard downtown Toronto, and we're gonna just milk that one for the teenage years.
Yeah. Well, with the kids too, the younger kids, 7 and 10, and 7 and 11 now, and the option to bring them on the road now as they're getting older is completely different from when we had them on the road at, you know, 0 and 1 to it's
Yes.
a totally different thing, and they can participate in potentially in some tours in a different way. I mean, we could have a sleepover on the road, Caroline. They
Yeah.
can take care of each other and while we do it. But it's that I'm looking forward to that. It had been several years with everything that's gone on, and I brought my son out a year ago, and we had the best adventure because it's a different thing. So there are those sides to it and then, you know, the kids get to see things and travel to places that they might, you know, we might not have been able to do otherwise. So there's that really awesome part of it too, where they, you know, get to come along sometimes.
Yeah, I do share your view that the term work-life balance is certainly quite a misleading one because I think it involves a lot of sacrifice on both the parts of work and life. But on the other hand, it gives you precious little time to be selfish because you're carrying all this amount of sacrifice, and plenty of people you know have you as a significant part of their lives.
That's an interesting way to put it. I haven't thought about it that way before.
Trying to practice selfishness on occasion. But you know, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's true. It is challenging to then allow the focus to come in to yourself. My husband and I've been talking a lot about that lately, and trying to find times, insist on times for each other to do just that. So he had me go away for a weekend in September, just me, so I could do whatever it is I wanted to do with that time. And it's hard to do. It's hard to do and not feel guilty leaving, you know, doing something on your own. But I think it's important for us to take care of ourselves too.
Well, it's important for your kids to see too, right? Like they need to see parents, they need to see their parents as people. Like I saw this beautiful thing recently, and this woman was saying to her son, I'm who am I? And the son said, you're my mom. And she goes, yes, and that's the most important thing I do. But I'm also a person, and I'm a woman, and I'm a runner. This is like this woman who I follow who's a runner, and I have to do these things. And it was just such an easy way to explain it. It's like, you know, a portion of our identity are these caring people who are caring. And I mean, you can hear that in our songs, like that it's all over our songs. Like three of all of the songs are that I've contributed to this record are about people that I love, including Kerri and Sue, and like how you feel like you're caring for each other. And we have this role as caregivers so often, and I'm going on a tangent now, but I feel like there's self-identity, and it's funny that you use the word selfishness, but I don't necessarily see it as selfishness. It's just existence, like the necessary, the way that we can get through and exist is to take the time for ourselves too, whether it's alone or, you know, the three of us going away, or, you know, it's such an interesting thing. Anyways, I've gotten off on a tangent.
It's the only way to model. It's the only way to model that, like, you know, if like there is a lot of, I do agree that there's a lot of sacrifice with the time that you end up bringing like to other people. There are choices. You're making choices. So there's a way to look at it where it's not like a negative thing. You are making choices to spend time with these people because those people matter. And when they see you saying no to this and yes to me, they're like learning while they're watching you to do the same thing. Because like I would be no good to my family if I just stopped everything that made me happy and me and just took care of them. That is like pointless. It's just it'll murder who I am. It will ruin like my effectiveness in the family, no matter who, whether it's my relationships with my sisters or my dad or the nieces and nephews who I get to spend time with, and my husband. So me first is like, it's air mask on you so that you can be there for them. I honestly think that like we model that for them, they will see us as people, and they will make space for our lives as we make space for them, because we're bringing them into our worlds too, you know. like they get excited because they're like, ooh, what do you do that's different from, like I get a little bit sad when I see people like just who are just like, I live for my kids. I'm like, and I haven't read a book in 10 years. I'm like, well, do both. Go for a walk or look at yourself in the mirror and love yourself. Like I just want everyone to, I want everyone to have that. And of course, maybe this is a bit of privilege too, you know. I can like Sue
Yeah.
said, we can get away for a day, and it's not gonna, my world's not gonna crumble, and people aren't gonna starve. So there's lots to that, you know. But I'm with you, man. Kids need to see it.
Yeah. So in reference to the title of this program, I always like to insert some sort of philosophical tidbits here and there. And the way I see it, who we are is very much defined by the roles that we play, and it doesn't just mean our vocations, like you guys being musicians and I being the one who asks inane questions, but you play the roles of a mom to your children and a daughter to your parents, and a member of whichever community that you belong to, the same as I. And I think that is a much better concept of individuality than the idea of the self-made man or woman that is prevalent in the way I see it, Western society today.
I love that. You're saying basically that like that we are made up, our individual nature is made up of a collection of the roles that we play.
Essentially, yes.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, agreed. I read this or I was listening to this great interview. I kind of gotta send it to you guys, where a young man had passed away and his parents recovered his journals, and he was speaking to like, you might not know today how uh, your presence on this earth relates to people who need you over time, but that like these things, like how people need us over time is a big part of like how we find meaning in life on the world. And it wasn't so much that he had figured it out. It was really young guy too, like quite young, and philosophically had really thought through, like he just knew that he was to be of service to other people, family, community, whatever. And it was just such a gorgeous, he put it so, and he had passed away early. So it was just like, it kind of stuck with me for just not knowing. I don't know what's going to happen when I'm 50, 60, 70, and 80, but I presume a lot is going to happen. Since the last 10 years, a lot has happened. I'm imagining the next 10 years, a lot will happen, and that role will continue to change. And I've definitely found my way in those relationships, figuring out how to be a better any of those roles, how to be better, whatever, sister, daughter, friend, and musician,
Gotta practice.
writer, yeah, creative, yeah.
It's funny, and I imagine that other people could potentially speak to our roles better than we can ourselves. So I know that I'm aware of the things. You might be aware of some of the things that I do, but I'm not always aware of how it's perceived or experienced, by others. Until you hear something. I think that's one of the things about this, being in this group, that's been really interesting is over the years is when we get notes from people about how the music and the tours and the shows and so on have impacted their lives on, and what it's done in their communities and their personal families and relationships. And that's been an interesting thing to experience, a really humbling thing to experience, to know the thing that we do collectively is having an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's relevant too because I know that the generation that comes after you, specifically, my generation, and um, perhaps the one that's coming after, me too. I think many of us are suffering through a crisis of meaning, and it has a lot to do with the fact that many of us have not quite figure out what can we contribute to the world, and how can we better do our contributions. And I think those of us who are more content with life as it is, even though we're quite realistic about the unfortunate aspects of life, we figure out to what extent we can contribute to it to make it better. Whereas those who haven't found that out tend to adopt a more nihilistic view.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, we are surrounded by a lot of young people, and there is a lot of despair in young people, but also like I think that young people are incredible. Like I'm not sure if this is what you're saying, but like a lot of people get down on like teenagers or and I think they're incredibly smart and intuitive, and they're different. They're made of different stuff than we were. I mean, they're experiencing life a very different way than we were. Kerri, Sue, and I are among the last generation of people who didn't grow up with devices in our hands. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have an email address until I was in high school. We had no social media until we were past college, university. And I'm really grateful for that. Really, really grateful that no one can see my high school years online anywhere. But I do have a lot of hope for young people, Gen Alpha and those little guys right now. But it's just, yeah, I try to stay in that hopeful zone. We've actually been making music with Raffi. I don't know if you know Raffi. He's like a really famous children's entertainer, and he's just making a new record. He's a superstar. And we're guesting on his record, and we've been spending a lot of time with him, and he has like this whole thing around children and young people about them being whole and good. And anyways, I really suggest if you have a chance to check it out. It's like a child honoring program that Raffi runs, and it's really beautiful.
Yes. What was I thinking? Oh, right. I was thinking that people who start their sentences with kids these days, they never include their own kids in that phrase.
Kids these days. I mean, we heard it too for us when we were kids.
But you were once the kids.
I was the kids these days.
Yeah. So this may be a broader question, but having been the raisers of part of the new generation, are you hopeful about the new generation?
Oh yeah.
Well, I see some really beautiful changes with the kids that are growing up right now, compared with how it was when I grew up. And yeah, I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful too. Same as Sue. I think young people are amazing. I work with some young people through an organization that does climate change activism, and they're just like, they're so smart. They're so, like I said, they're really intuitive, and there's a lot, they're facing a lot. It's a different world, but they're so strong. I'm like blown away by teenagers and kids. And
they're open, kind, like in a way that is like eye opening and heart wrenching, like beautiful, like I love kids. I think the kids are gonna be okay.
Yeah, I feel like there's an awareness and a courage, bravery in kids right now to do some of the really big stuff and the hard stuff, and they're ready to make changes happen, and I can't wait.
We could change the like kids these days are great.
Right,
Just like change
Yeah.
the tenor
Yeah.
of the day. Kids these days are just they've got a different yes, they have different like access to everything that maybe we didn't in the 80s and 90s. That's which is for better or for worse. But the openness and the kindness and the receptivity to each other that I witness in the same town that I grew up in, it feels like a different world.
Hmm.
But for better or for worse. Like they've got some challenges too, but boy, I like them. These kids today.
Yeah. With the new formation, you can include your own kids in that one too.
That's right. Except when they're not listening to us
Which can happen, I'm sure.
every day. Yeah.
Right. So, according to the band's Wikipedia page, you guys are formed in 2006. I know that people who were born in 2006 are teenagers now, about to enter college and such. So I hope that doesn't or does make yes. No, it makes me feel old too. I was alive in that year. So, what happened in the year 2006 and that brought the three of you together?
Mhm. We all had solo things or duos. So I was out playing as a soloist. Kerri was doing solo stuff. Caroline was out. She had her duo with her sister, Brooke sisters. And we knew each other in various capacities, and had done a show prior to the first one, is the Good Lovelies. We'd done it just as our individual things, and it was just something we like to do. We like to put on shows with our friends, and made this plan to do this show around Christmas time. And why not? We all sing, do harmony. We had various choral backgrounds, so let's do some Christmas songs, mix it in, sing on each other's solo stuff. So by the time we got on the stage in December 2006, it was a very collaborative show, singing and playing on each other's music and working up some other holiday things at the same time. It was a lot of fun. We had a really, really good time. And then we kept rolling with it. I think another gig offer came in. We had put a name on the show for fun, and that stuck. And other gigs came in. We started looking to festivals. We got into some folk festivals and thought, well, let's record some music. So we recorded an EP, and it just started rolling very naturally, and it is still rolling.
It kind of swept us away. Like, we all had day jobs, and we were singing out at night and the weekends in the scene in Toronto, and it was just like all of a sudden we're like, wow, there we go. And it was just really fun. We just kept rolling. And we quit our jobs and we went on the road, and now it's 17 years later.
Mhm.
12 album releases
Wow.
later.
And
Yeah,
we will never be the same.
Yeah.
See how I brought that back.
Very good. Sell those records, Kerri.
I should have had one here. What was I thinking?
I know.
All
I
behind
don't-
me. So dumb.
Where are they?
Mine are too far away.
Yeah, mine too.
So yeah, and here's to the other 17 years.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Yeah, so tell me about how you guys have I suppose stuck together throughout the 17 years. I know that there's a very long lifespan when it comes to, I guess, 3-person groups.
Yeah, so we've been told. I guess so.
We share.
Feel
We
that
share.
long.
Honest, we're open, we are family and treat each other as such. And we've made sure that as a business, we're trying to make smart and fair business decisions that keep things healthy. and support each other all the way. We check in. We're all very equal parts of how everything runs, whether it's songwriting or planning or whatever it is. We each have our roles. We divide and conquer, and just trying to make sure that everything stays good and healthy as we go along. I think that's really sustained this group where there's no front person. It's the three of us at the core of it and at the front line of it all the way.
Yeah, we're not the kind of band that, like, if one of us was like, I can't, guys, we wouldn't just like replace that person. Like, we know lots of bands that will just find a new band member and move on, but Good Lovelies really are the sum of its parts. Like, that's the three of us, and it's like deeply entrenched.
Yeah, Sue said it first. She said we share, and we literally share responsibilities, and we share each other's songs. They are our songs because we made them together out in the world. It's a lovely feeling. It's a lovely feeling for other people to. Is it lovely to you guys get sad when you hear that other people don't operate that way? Because I think I just expect everyone should do it. Just share.
Well, yeah, I mean, the songwriting thing is just a no-brainer to me. Like, if you're a professional songwriter and you're writing songs for other people, that's maybe different, but like bands that don't share writing credits it's like the ultimately the vehicle for those songs is the band that you're in. It makes sense to share in that because of the recorded works. And
you feel ownership when someone brings a song. When you get to stage and you get to sing that, you're like, that's our, like, yeah, that person, like, yeah, that person wrote it, and then they brought it to us, and we were like, thank you, let's bring our stuff to it, bring it to stage, because like that's how the songs are getting heard. I'm very grateful to that piece being part of our core accidental strategy. There was no strategy. We just were like, let's just share.
I remember that conversation. Actually, we did talk about it and then we looked at the bands that had longevity, and all the bands that have longevity share writing credits, like U2, Coldplay. I mean, like U2, Coldplay, Good Lovelies, but yeah.
There's REM and there's Radiohead, the two bands I can think of at the moment.
Wonderful.
Good company.
Company and longevity. I think it's that, like, what's the saying, like, all boats, like a rising tide lifts all boats. I always like that. Like, the more you lift each other up, the more where we can go together is sort of limitless. Anytime I'm feeling like the opposite, scarcity, fear, creatively, like I don't have anything to give, everything feels small. And the minute we just kind of open up and are more generous with the way we want to include people, I think that is a really beautiful philosophy that because of this, has entered my bloodstream, I think. So the more community, it happened around the pandemic too, like when we did that Christmas project together, the virtual Christmas tour, and everything. It was about going on tour, even though we were going to do a virtual show in one location in Hamilton, Ontario. The spirit of going on tour to go to Winnipeg and Alberta, and getting a special guest in that area, and a food bank or a charity that we liked in these like towns and stuff. Nothing made me feel as proud, really, as how we tried to just. It wasn't a money making thing. It wasn't like business. Someone would have maybe failed us in a business course, and yet
that was really special.
Very special to, to I think fundamentally, like, the elements of why we do it. Like, it is because community. It is because these people have made our career for us, and to exclude them just for it felt good. And so I think of that a lot. The rising tide lifts all boats. We're those boats. Boat too.
Okay, so final question, one that I conclude every interview with every musician who's been on this program. What does music mean to you?
That's a big question.
I'm going to start with one word, which is like just I would say release or expression. at the very core. That's just one start. What music means to me.
Yeah.
You go first.
It's funny. I mean, yeah, there are so many ways, I guess. It's so many things. But it's also a constant, I suppose. Whatever the need is, it is a constant in my life. It's always been there in one way or another, whether that's been entertainment, just for me taking it in, or whether it's been some sort of, like Kerri said, a release, or healing, or just, I needed to cry, I can go to music for that. I need to dance, I can go to music for that. It's just it's there in one way or another every day, and it always has been. And so it's really just it's a constant, and it's an essential for me.
Yeah, I feel the same. I have kind of two, has for me, music sort of exists in two ways. One is through receiving music, and that's like in our home, we changed our home around this year, and the central part of our home now is a record player, CD player, and tuner. And music is just on in our home constantly. So there's like the receiving experience of music, which relates to, in our case as creators of music, it's like the both receiving and giving is like, it's like an expression of the soul. So we all have, it sounds really cheesy, but to me it's like you're opening yourself up, and you're sort of channeling your soul through this music, whether you're receiving it or you're giving it. And I grew up with music constantly around me, and now I'm watching my kids with it too. It's like it's pretty incredible, and what a privilege that we have the voices to actually express music too, not just to receive it, but to give it.
Well, on that three wonderful notes, thank you very much, Caroline, Kerri, and Sue of the Good Lovelies, for joining this program.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
And congratulations on the release of your new album, We Will Never Be the Same, and I wish you the best of luck on your tour.
Thank you so much.
Happy birthday on
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's very kind of you.